Welcome to the Derek O'Shea Show, where we discuss culture, news, politics, and more.
Oh, yeah.
Sit back, relax, and I hope you
I'm back,
enjoy the
baby.
show. Be sure to tell your friends and family about the revolution.
Let's go. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Derek O'Shea Show. Oh, my camera is doing a job. How are you guys doing today? I hope you guys are doing just PG fine. My podcast is available below because I learned my lesson. Yeah, I just came from a 2-week ban on YouTube for spreading medical misinformation, which, you know, as always, they never clarify what it is because I would like to know, because I would like to change if it's completely true, and I didn't feel like I spreaded anything. But if you want to know what today's podcast is, it's a little too hot to handle for YouTube, so check it out below. But let's watch the beloved press conference. It is live. I hope you guys are doing just fine. If you want to support my show, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/Derek O'Shea Show. I'd greatly appreciate it. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/Derek O'Shea Show. It would mean a lot to me. It would mean the absolute world to me. And I hope you guys are doing good because I'm ready. I'm geared up. I'm ready. I'm roaring. I'm roaring to go. I am pumped to be back in the saddle again after my 2-week break. I learned so much. YouTube taught me what it is to be a man and how to grow on my break. But as I learned, the lesson I think I learned the most is that I'm just not going to talk about COVID on YouTube. It's not going to happen. It's not that they're silencing me. I'm talking about it in other platforms. You're welcome. If you're ever like, hey, I don't see Derek, I don't see his show popping up anywhere, what's going on? That's simple. It's because I've been taken down. So make sure you follow me on all the links below. I am everywhere on every platform. I can't think of a platform that I'm not on. I'm on all the platforms. I'm on BitChute. I'm on Rumble. I'm on Odyssey. I'm on what other platforms? Make sure to follow me on Getter. Also follow me on Locals because that's a good way to follow me on there. They need to figure out their live streaming capabilities. It's just not there like it should be. But if you're wondering, where the podcast is today, because you're like, wow, this title makes no sense to what's going on, it's because I don't feel like getting taken down off YouTube again. So if there's any subject that I feel like YouTube is just weird about, you know, it doesn't matter if you quote the CDC, it doesn't matter if you're just talking about a business, you're liable to make them angry. So I'm just going to put anything that's anti-YouTube on other platforms because other platforms are about freedom of speech. But let's watch this press conference.
Speak to what's being done to address that issue, not just in Virginia, but all across the country. And do you anticipate it being a problem in terms of getting the 500 million tests that the president wants to bring online?
Well, first, I think what that illustrates is that I
hope you guys are doing just
global supply
fine.
chain, and it's a global COVID issue that's affecting all countries. We have a procedure in place to prioritize medical supplies as needed. If you'll see in today's White House blog that there's an example of within the last week of medical supplies being prioritized by the.
Sorry about that. Oh, it's always whenever I move, it changes my settings. And I'm back.
A procedure in place, starting with the
But how are you guys doing? I missed you guys.
Those medical supplies to identify.
As
them
always,
early,
if I respond
make sure those containers are separately identified.
To a question you don't see, it's because I'm on another
what we call
platform.
Stowed in
I'm on
a position
Facebook,
on the ship where they
YouTube,
can be
Twitter,
switched off, and then are prioritized for unloading.
Twitch.
That would have to happen, obviously, on a priority basis.
Do you anticipate that the distribution of the 500 billion tests that the president is looking to bring online could be slowed down?
We're working hard to make sure that those tests are there when they're needed. And together, this supply chain with the millions of people that work on it have met the challenges so far. We expect to continue to do that.
JJ? Hi, thanks. You mentioned the Port of Oakland coming up with a short-term measure to ease, to alleviate some of the pressure on the agriculture exporters. Is there a long-term plan to help ease some of those same pressures on the ag industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. Many people focus on the import of goods to the U.S., which is important. Exporting goods of all kinds, including agricultural projects, is every bit as important. The Port of Oakland partnership that we have is focused on both the short term and the long term. In the short term, making sure that agricultural exports that go out in containers are not.
But those of you that don't know, I'm still going to be doing live stuff on here. I'm still going to be having my podcast on here. Also, I'm trying to get a show together where I'm communicating with another person. It's hard doing a podcast alone, sometimes long form. So I'm trying to find somebody to do that with me. I think I got somebody, but we're locking that in. But if there's any topic that I feel like YouTube just hates, I'm just not going to put it on here. I'm going to put it on Rumble. I'm going to put it on BitChute. I'm going to put it on Odyssey. All these other places that don't care. Because as always, my channel is not crazy. I'm not fringy. It's just not who I am. But I will question any narrative. I don't care.
How is that feeding into this disruption, and what is the administration doing to kind of compound those effects of the shortage of truckers?
Well, first, Secretaries Walsh and Buttigieg have been working hard to make sure that that trucking as a profession is more appealing, and it's not just recruiting new people.
You got to make that trucking appealing.
Whether it's
trucking
internship
appealing
programs where you don't have to pay for the training to become a trucker, which make it more appealing, or quality of life, quality of job life.
That's
issues.
It's like the toughest part of trucking is quality of life.
People are more interested in staying in the profession. Those are some of the ways that it can be done. At the risk of stating the obvious, the private sector has an important part to play here as well in terms of pay and working conditions.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Here we go. Make sure you subscribe if you're new.
Okay. I only have one item at
Here
the
she
top
comes.
for all of you. Just wanted to provide a brief update on our federal testing sites, which we continue to expand and are doing strong work to reach Americans, especially in the areas where we're seeing the greatest need. Throughout the holiday, we work to rapidly establish free testing sites in multiple states, and in the coming weeks, we will have new sites operating across the nation. Additional sites are opening this week in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia,
You're a lying dog
Maine,
faced pony show.
Nevada, Delaware, Texas, and Washington state to follow. Mobile federal testing sites are now open in New York City and New Jersey, which are providing thousands of free tests daily. Our 12 testing sites in New York City alone have processed over 8,700 tests since the first site launched shortly before Christmas. These sites have been effective in reaching a diverse set of communities, with 76% of those tested in New York City and 82% of those in New Jersey self-identifying as non-white. These numbers reflect the Biden administration's commitment to ensuring that our hardest hit and hardest risk communities have equitable access to testing. With that, Darlene.
I wanted to start with Chicago. Can you tell us if the White House or the Education Department or the administration at large is doing anything to help get teachers and students back into school there?
Well,
Come
we are
on, man.
across government. We are in regular contact with a range of stakeholders on the issue of school reopening and closures, including superintendents,
just don't wanna work.
state leaders, principals, teachers, parents, and other school staff. And that is certainly the case now, today, this week, as the president is working, and we are all working to keep schools open. As the president said yesterday, he wants schools to be open. We know.
Shout out to the 30% of teachers that said that they should go and continue to do school as per usual. Those 30% people who voted no to going remote in Chicago deserve an applause because they care about kids. I'll just put it that way. They care about kids more than themselves. And that's what teaching should be. That's why I got into education, because I cared about raising up the next generation to think rightly. Just keep watching.
know they can be open safely, and we're here to help make that happen. And he agrees with medical, scientific, and education experts that because of the historic work we've done, we are more than equipped to ensure schools are open. And we're going to keep our children and educators who selflessly serve their community safe, but ensure that children are not enduring the mental health impact of not being in school, that there are not gaps in learning. This includes schools everywhere, including in Chicago. Fortunately, 96% of schools are doing just that. And just as a reminder, and I know I touched on this yesterday, but the president and our administration foresaw early on that schools across the country would need additional resources. That's why he fought for $130 billion in the American Rescue Plan for funding to schools to implement mitigation strategies, including $10 billion for testing, which has already been distributed to states. And the Department of Education has also been providing technical assistance and resources for months now on everything from implementing mitigation strategies to connecting schools with testing providers, hosting vaccine clinics, and addressing pandemic related mental health issues. So long story short, we want schools to be open. The president wants them to be open, and we're going to continue to use every resource and work to ensure that's the case.
Right, it has nothing to do with the president. It's the unions that voted on it.
Testing or anything like that you're hearing from Chicago that the White House can be helpful with in terms of trying to get schools off of the virtual model and back into the classroom?
Well, again, $10 billion in testing testing funding has been distributed to states already prior to this month. Last year. That funding, I can certainly check if there's more funding available from the state of Illinois, but we're encouraging states to ensure that that money is being spent, is being distributed to schools that need that funding, and we already distributed $130 billion in funding to states to distribute to school districts for mitigation measures. Now, different school districts have made different decisions about what their needs are over the course of the last year, but a number of school districts did take steps to put in place contracts with testing contractors to ensure that they had that availability and access for their schools. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Looking back to that ARP money, does the White House wish that there was more oversight in where that American Rescue Plan funding went, since the president said yesterday that some of the schools have not used it well, and we're seeing in some places like Chicago and Milwaukee, some of it's been earmarked for other purposes, including critical race theory. And in Chicago, you've got kids not going back to school now.
Well, Jackie, it's always been the case that local school districts make decisions about what is needed for their schools. That's always been the case long before the president took office. We did distribute that money out to states. As he noted yesterday, some have spent it, others have not spent it. They've spent it in different ways. I would remind everyone that when the CDC put out a range of mitigation measures, there were a range of steps schools could take, and different schools, some schools needed to redo their ventilation. Some schools decided to invest in more bus drivers or more space so that they could socially distance. Different schools made different decisions. What is important for people to understand is that there is some of this funding that hasn't been spent in certain states to put in place mitigation measures. Now is the time to do that.
And then on the new CDC guidance, it's getting some criticism that it's confusing, the testing after leaving isolation, because it says that you don't need to test after day 5, but if you can get a test, if you want to test, and you test positive, you should continue to isolate until day 10. So that would potentially create a gap of people who are positive after day 5, but don't test and go back out into the community. And then there have been other policies that have shifted, including the policy around healthcare workers needing to test negative before returning to work, and then that going away. And also the note in the new CDC guidance that negative tests don't necessarily mean that you're infection-free. So is the CDC still led by science and not by other
my
factors
God.
in determining its policy?
Well, Jackie, the CDC is absolutely led by data and science. And, again, if they hadn't changed their recommendations over the course of time, schools would probably be closed across the country, right? They, of course, are continuing to address, as they have for the past year plus, steps that need to be taken in order to protect the American people. The CDC's guidance did not add a recommendation for testing, including in workplaces. The the CDC director just answered this question on a COVID briefing about an hour ago.
Hunter
where she
Biden's
basically said there was a lot of
laptop.
questions about testing. And she wanted to
Dude, what a
provide
name.
information in response to that about how to
Yo,
apply
what
a
up,
test
Hunter?
should people decide to use a test. They have also conveyed in their guidance, and they can speak for themselves, of course, that transmission and infectiousness occurs in the first 5 days after a diagnosis with COVID-19, somewhere in the range of 85 to 90% of the time. Hence their guidance on the 5 days. So they can speak to their own guidance. It is led by data and science. It is not determined here by the White House. It is determined by the
What
data
happens when you
and the
weaponize
science.
the word science?
See,
It gets used right back at you.
Walensky and Dr. Fauci, as we've talked about earlier this week, had conflicting accounts of whether testing was necessary. Dr. Walensky said part of that consideration was what people would tolerate. And we know that it's important to keep schools open, to keep the economy running. Isn't it time to incorporate some of those other messaging points into this administration's discussions about, how we emerge from this pandemic? We talk about how it's led by the science and we're following the science, but it seems like we're also following, economic needs and political needs and logistical needs.
Well, here's the difference from the last administration.
Ooh.
We are not driving our decision making.
She gives
on how we're
redheads.
addressing
Don't
the
let her
pandemic
dictate
through
what redheads are.
messaging,
I
or through
dictate them.
political concerns. We're driving.
What up,
it
Justin?
by
How you
what
doing,
the
man?
CDC and the medical doctors and the experts there convey. They update their guidance. They change their guidance. Certainly, I'm sure they have disagreements internally about what guidance they should put out.
Except for on YouTube.
That is a healthy
It's
part
always
of a
been
discussion of a
consistent,
policy
right,
process.
YouTube?
But that's what we're driven by, and that's also why we do COVID
not
briefings, so that
talking
you all can
about
ask
it.
those questions,
These
as
people
you just
are.
did this morning an hour ago.
The president yesterday said this continues to be a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Isn't it also fair to say that it's still also a pandemic of the vaccinated?
Oh my God, YouTube! I didn't say that. She said that.
Well, Jackie, we also know that you are 17 times more likely to die of COVID if you are not
They
vaccinated.
ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine. You
So
just
I
can't
think
get
in
into
terms
it.
of the impact, the
Go.
dire impact on people across the country.
What a
we should
depressing
be very
moment.
clear about the impact. of
Justin,
not being
what's your
vaccinated
news?
and the people who
Got any
will
New
be,
Year's resolutions? How was
hurt,
Christmas?
Be hospitalized and face the threat of death. the
Also,
most
shout out to
of people who are
Hunter
unvaccinated.
Biden's
One question
laptop.
on the CDC announcement.
Chatting.
Rather the COVID briefing announcement. The CDC is not going to change its definition of fully vaccinated to include a booster shot. Jeff Zients and
Dang, this girl's getting a lot of questions in.
for that. They didn't explain though why that is. Can you give us some context on how that decision was made?
Again, I would say that's a decision made by our health and medical experts. They conveyed the technical definition. As you said, a fully vaccinated with COVID-19 has not changed. Someone is considered fully vaccinated if they receive a primary series of vaccines. They also clarified that CDC recommends people stay up to date, as everybody should stay up to date on any vaccine. If your kid needs a vaccine, when you go to the pediatrician and they say you got a 5-year, a vaccine at 5 years old, you kind of hold your breath because you don't want to have your kid get a shot, but you keep it up to date, and that's what they're recommending. But they can speak to their own decision making. Go ahead, Trevor.
Jen, so next week I know we've got these 3 tracks of talks with Russia.
Yeah.
One is U.S. Russia, one is NATO Russia, another is broader European security.
Who's relaxing
talks.
goals?
For the U.S. Russia talks.
Wait,
is there some-
goals to get a JDM. Oh no, that sounds awesome. I would love a little Celica GT. Dude, I'm doing well. New Year's resolution. I've been doing polar plunges in the morning. It's changed my life. Not really. I don't know. Just trying to wake up early, be more intentional about my mornings. I've been journaling in the morning, doing stuff I'm thankful for, and doing goals I have for myself. But as you know, I've been on vacation, but also I had some deaths in the family I had to deal with and stuff like that. Also, I've been off YouTube because I've been in timeout. I love how all these prominent YouTubers talk about the censorship of YouTube, and yet they still stay on there and they're doing just fine. Whereas me, I'm constantly taken down. And I don't think I'm as crazy as them, so I don't understand. I don't know what the rules are.
Military occupation in Ukraine. In addition to the 3 meetings,
I'm just
next
not going
week,
to talk
we
about
will,
COVID on
continue to
YouTube
actively
ever.
support progress
Just
on the
ever.
Minsk
Who
Accords to
cares?
resolve the current
I'll talk about it in
conflict
every other
the
platform.
Donbass. There have been a number of proposals, of course, that Russia has already published or put out there, advocated for. President Biden has made clear that we can make progress on some issues.
Thanks, Biden.
We're not responding to them point by point, and I don't expect we will in these negotiations because in our experience, you don't make actual progress by negotiating in public, and also because many of the proposals don't merit such a response. But Russia is very familiar with our positions, which are grounded in the fundamental principles of European security they once agreed to, including that borders cannot be redrawn by force, and countries have the sovereign right.
She's got to stop
determine
slamming
with
her
whom they
fists right
associate.
next to that
Finally,
microphone. It's driving me nuts.
We don't know what next week's conversations will
did it
bring,
again.
but our approach to the discussions will be pragmatic, results-oriented, and we believe there are
Did it
areas we
again.
can make progress on with Moscow, make progress on if they come to the table ready to do that. And obviously, that's the nature of diplomacy.
Okay. Sorry, just one more. Within that region, we've also seen a lot of instability in Kazakhstan. Is that something that the White House has a position on?
Yeah, we have obviously, as you noted, we have seen that, and we're monitoring reports of protests in Kazakhstan. We support calls for calm, for protesters to express themselves peacefully, and for
Like the
authorities
summer
to
of love.
exercise, restraint. There are some
I'm
crazy
sorry, it's only a matter of
Russian
time before you
claims.
blow up.
About
Hey, appreciate that,
behind
Justin.
this, so let me just
Good
use
to
this
see you are the
opportunity to
only
convey
news
that
I
is
watch.
absolutely
Hey, I
false
appreciate
and
that.
clearly a part of the standard
I'm trying to be
Russian
consistent. I'm trying to make a difference. I'm trying to be a voice of reason. I'm trying to not just be another news source that makes you depressed and makes you feel like there's no hope in the world. I feel like there's always hope, and I will always push for that. So I appreciate those words, Justin. It means a lot, man.
Of our private conversations with these providers, it was a set period of time. But what's important to for people to understand, or the American people to understand, is that our focus is, of course, ensuring that we are increasing access and access to free tests to people across the country. So obviously that has been the case, selling them at cost, something that we strongly supported, advocated for the last couple of months. Since that time, the president has quadrupled the size of our testing capacity. We have announced the intention to purchase 500 million. We're in the process of finalizing those contracts, of course. Tests, we've made 20,000 testing sites available. We've opened a range of federal testing sites across the country. So our objective is to continue to expand access to free tests for the American people across the country. And I'd also note, of course, next week, people can submit to their insurers, and we'll have more details on that. I know you asked about that yesterday, on how that will work. Can submit to their to their insurance companies to get reimbursed for their tests as well.
But I guess the point is those 500 million tests aren't available yet. You can't go on a website and sign up for them yet. You can't receive them yet. You can't yet file a claim with your insurance company to be reimbursed for the tests that people have been buying. And so I'm wondering, since the president has had the CEO of Walmart here at the White House before, they have a pretty close relationship since he took office, why he would not try to extend that agreement that they had with Walmart, that the White House had with Walmart, to keep those tests a little bit less expensive than they already are.
Well, I'm not going to detail private conversations, but I will just reiterate that next week people can get reimbursed for their tests. I just announced at the top of this briefing a number of additional
Only the best
federal
coffee
testing large
with
sites
my
that
face.
we're opening. We have 20,000 free testing sites across the country, and we are very close to being able to announce
These testing sites.
put
Are
up the
people just
websites
getting
of people.
tested even with any symptoms? I feel like that's what's going on. You get like a runny nose. Like I've had a cold the last week. I didn't go get tested. Why? Because I'm a hypochondriac and I just assume if I have a sore throat, that means I have throat cancer. Is that what's going on in the world today? That's what I feel like. I feel like all these lines that we're seeing are just like hypochondriac people.
For each rapid test that they buy to be reimbursed by the companies instead of just making the rapid test free.
We are making the test free. This is an
Troy.
additional step. We're making them 500 million of them free to people
Imagine
who want
if that
tests.
was the
we'll continue to build.
Troy, imagine if that was the reality. I feel completely the same way. But these companies feel like they're making a moral stance. And once you make it a moral issue, religious, truth, they see it as a way to gain freedom or a way to gain salvation into the narrative. I don't. They think they're doing the Lord's work by doing crap like that. I totally agree with you, Troy.
law and our system of democratic governance. He will also speak
But
to
once
the
it became
work
a moral
we still
thing,
need
I
to
mean,
do
these
to
people think,
secure and
like, the minute
strengthen
you
our
get COVID
democracy
is
and
like,
our institutions
you
to
did
reject
something
the
wrong.
hatred and lies we
It's
saw
crazy.
on January 6th and to unite our country. I'd also note that President Biden has been.
I've never gotten the cold
clear-eyed
where I've
about
been
the
like,
threat
what did
the
I
former
do
president
wrong? Oh my
represents to our
God.
democracy, and how the former president constantly works to undermine basic American values and rule of law. And President Biden has, of course, spoken repeatedly about how the former president abused his office, undermined the Constitution,
Oh my God,
and
yeah.
ignored his oath to the American people in an effort to amass more power for himself and his allies. He sees January 6th as a tragic culmination of what those 4 years under President Trump did to our country.
January
And they
6th,
reflect his
COVID. Is there
importance,
anything else going
to
in the
president
world,
of
people?
winning,
That's
what he has
a
called
real
many times, and you've heard
decent
him call many
question.
times, the battle for the soul of our nation. So just as you heard him say on January 6th of last year, I would expect that President Biden will lay out the significance of what happened at the
Oh
Capitol and the
my
singular
God.
responsibility President Trump has for the chaos and carnage that we saw, and he will forcibly push back on the lies spread by the former president.
The
in an attempt to
chaos and
mislead the
carnage.
American people and his own supporters, as well as distract from his role and what happened. So he will, of course, speak to the
People
moment,
still think that
to the
people
importance
got
in
murdered
history of
besides
the
Ashley.
peaceful transfer of power, of
unreal.
what we need to do to protect our own democracy and be forward-looking. But he will also reflect on the role his predecessor had.
Will he call Donald Trump out by name?
We'll see. We're finalizing the speech, but I think people will know who he's referring to.
Isn't that
One more
fun?
question. When it comes to voting rights, and you've talked about how important
These
that
people
is to the
make me so
president,
sick.
will he directly call Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Kirsten Sinema about voting rights?
He is in touch with
You have a right
range
to
of
vote.
members of the Senate.
I hate
including,
talking points.
Those you have mentioned about a range of topics that are of a priority to him, including voting rights. But we're not going to
zoom in
outline
on
more
her face.
details from here.
Has he been in touch with them this week?
I'm just not going to outline more details of private conversations from here. Go ahead, Kristen.
Jen, thank you. Before I get to
I feel like it
what's
makes it more
happening in
obnoxious with her
Washington,
face bigger.
wondering if the president has been briefed
It's-
on the
it's
tragic
like making it
fire
more
in
intense.
Philadelphia. We know that 13 people so far have been killed in
That is all they
fire.
have,
I
Justin.
have seen those reports. Absolutely devastating. A number of children. But I
They
will
need
have
you
to get
to
an update on if
to
he's been
live in
briefed. I know they
fear
were just
in order
coming out as we were
to
coming out here.
Okay, thank you.
keep your attention.
Going back to the CDC
To keep
and the
us
new
fighting against
guidelines
each
that
other.
have come under criticism
Once
with a
once
lot
we
of
can
parents,
once they
teachers,
establish the
other folks
person is
saying
the
they're
other,
just flatly
they can do whatever they want.
confusing, and that there was a clarification put out yesterday that doesn't feel much like a clarification. And I guess the question is, does President Biden have confidence, and is he satisfied with the job that the CDC is doing?
He has confidence in the
Again, YouTube,
the
I'm not
scientific
saying this, it's them.
expertise, the medical expertise.
I feel like I have to
of the
say that.
team
I have
at
to
the
I have to
CDC,
give a disclaimer
and
every
he
time they
believes
talk.
The American people had a desire, a need for us to address this
Kinda like
pandemic
this
led
crazy
by data and science, and that's what he's going to
zoom
continue to
in
rely
vibe.
on.
One of the things that people are focusing on is this idea that people can decide whether to get a test. You were just asked a version of this, but I guess the question is, why should it be up to individuals to assess their own symptoms or whether they even have symptoms?
Because you're an adult?
Again, I think, Kristen, I would encourage you to ask the CDC director and the CDC any specific questions about their guidance.
I don't have a runny
They're
nose. I don't know what to
determined
do.
and issued by them.
Senator Schumer, Majority Leader Schumer, said yesterday that he expects negotiations to resume shortly in the near term between the president and Joe Manchin about Build Back Better.
He's not going to do it.
You were asked about this yesterday, but let me
I
see if I
know.
can get an update from
Okay.
you. Any timeline or guidance on when those discussions might start, and will they just start in short order, or is voting rights the priority right now?
Well, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and I can
No, you
assure that
can't.
We are in touch with a range
It's
of
literally
senators
impossible.
and their staffs and committee staff about Build Back Better, even as we're working in lockstep with Leader Schumer about getting voting rights done, a huge priority to the president. So I would not confuse the legislative calendar with a lack of action or behind-the-scenes discussions about an important priority.
Would the president ultimately, for the larger goal of seeing Build Back Better pass, be willing to sign a final piece of legislation that did not include an expanded child tax credit?
I'm just not going to negotiate from here, but the president obviously sees the child
Yeah,
tax
if you
credit
if you
extension
can't
as a key
pass a bill,
priority.
just sign it
He
into an
sees it
executive
as,
order, because that's
a
what
benefit that
a
has
democracy
provided,
does.
Essential assistance to families
Oh,
across the
God,
country,
I freaking
has,
can't stand our
cut,
politicians.
Childhood poverty by 40%. That's an amazing statistic. I'd also note, and I
They're
mentioned
not-
this yesterday.
they're not
but I got
letting
a
me
little
get
bit
my
more
way. I'll just sign
information on
it.
So we are going to continue to fight absolutely to have it done. I would note, though, that Americans who qualified for the extended child tax credit will still receive half of the entire benefit when they file their taxes this year. So the families who have received monthly payments will get up to $1,800 for each child under 6 as when they file their taxes, and up to $1,500 for each child age 6 to 17. Obviously, that doesn't address what happens after here, but just an important component for people to know and understand.
And just finally, quickly on the speech tomorrow, you've given us a little bit of a preview of the substance. Can you talk about how the president is spending this day in terms of preparing to deliver this speech? How much is he focused on that today? Is he doing dry run-throughs? I mean, obviously, this is a significant moment.
What a weird
Look,
question.
I would say first, yeah, I know the president doesn't have public events today. He does have a number of meetings with policy teams.
Okay, so he is
often what
working.
He's
doing
behind the
his
scenes.
job.
If he were standing here today, which I know he's always invited, is what you guys will say, but he would say we never give him any free time or any time to think, and that is probably true. So that is a big part of his day today. He is obviously very personally involved.
Poor people
in what
that
he's going
become
to say
president
tomorrow.
because
And
they
as
wanted
somebody
to.
who
It's
served
unbelievable.
36 years in the Senate.
Pray for them.
You know, he watched in horror as many people who were in Congress that day, whether they were members or staff or people who just had been working in the Capitol building for some time.
Or if they were across the street and had nothing to do with
hit me
it.
personally, and I think the role of the former president in this, the role and unfortunately the silence and the complacency of a number of far too many, not every,
When you
but
are
far too
failing
many
at your
members of the
job,
Republican
you
Party,
talk about
in the
everyone
time
else.
Since then,
Isn't
in
that true?
perpetuating the big lie has stuck with him as well.
The big
so
lie.
I would say that of course
God, I'm so tired of
he's
this.
involved in the writing of any major speech he gives, in feedback, and conveying whether it's meeting the moment of what he wants to say, but certainly tomorrow the significance of it is something that he feels personally about. Go ahead.
On the idea of some fresh spending for COVID relief for small businesses, first of all, can you share some reaction to that? And then also, would the White House be open to spending for restaurants, COVID relief for restaurants, or would the president be opposed to that?
Well, we, as you know, we did a major relief package that included helping restaurants just last year. We are in constant discussions with Congress and leadership about the needs of the American people, whether they are small businesses or restaurants or people sitting in their homes as we continue to fight the pandemic, but don't have any new prediction of pending or new pending requests or specific requests, and wouldn't predict that at this moment in time.
Okay, and then on the Federal Reserve, on the search, does the White House have a clear idea from Senator Manchin how he would vote on some of these nominations? Has the president been running some of the names by him to see how he feels?
I'm just not going to have an update on that for you.
Okay, and then a question on some big tech legislation. Do you know if the president supports the House package of antitrust bills to rein in big tech? I know that they were brought up in June.
Yeah.
Has he asked the speaker to bring any of those bills to the floor?
So here's where we are. I mean, the president's view is that the history of the country suggests that strong antitrust laws have been a key to American technological leadership and preeminence. And for generations, our approach has been to expose our main tech firms to more competition. The president has been very clear in his view that we need more competition in the tech industry. That's his fundamental view. You saw that in the executive order on competition he signed in July. And his view is that over the past 10 years, the largest tech platforms have, as they've acquired hundreds of companies, including alleged killer acquisitions meant to shut down a potential competitive threat.
Always.
That's not a healthy place for the system. And the large platforms, the large platforms' power gives them unfair opportunities to get a leg up on small businesses.
I love all these
that
politicians
that
pretending
rely
they
on them to
are
reach
cracking down
customers.
on these big companies
The
that they
president
take
also
money
called on
from.
federal agencies like DOJ and the FTC to use their existing tools to tackle these problems in the executive order. I know you're specifically asking about the legislation. We're encouraged, he's encouraged, to see bipartisan interest in Congress in passing legislation to address the power of tech platforms through antitrust legislation and to protect privacy. I don't think we've done a statement yet of administrative policy on this particular legislation, but we're in discussion, and we are encouraged by the bipartisan interest in doing something about this. Go ahead.
Question on climate. I'm sure you saw Senator Manchin's comments yesterday, positive about reaching a deal on climate. What is the White House's reaction to that? And is there a possibility that that could be sectioned off and reach a separate deal on that?
I'm not going to have any direct reaction to Senator Manchin's comments, which were extensive, and he frequently talks to the press, which of course is a good thing.
Unlike Biden.
But I would say
he
that
talks.
a key component of the president's Build Back Better agenda is climate and addressing the climate crisis. That's how he feels. It's vitally important to him. As you know, there's a significant investment in addressing the climate crisis in the bill
Biden's so
and
serious about
legislation
climate,
that we have
he
been,
doesn't take
working,
his
on
plane
with,
to Delaware
Congress
every
on.
weekend.
And that's
He's very
important
serious.
because while we have taken a number of steps from the administration with the power
These
he
people
has
are to
as
be taken
president,
seriously.
tackling super pollutants, phasing down HFCs, rallying the world on methane in Glasgow, standing with auto workers and America's big car manufacturers to roll out plans to boost electric vehicles, putting America on track for 1 of every 2 cars sold to be zero emissions. These are important steps he's taken on his own. We know that working with Congress on legislation is vital and important to reaching our objectives, to reaching our goals, and to really making an impact. But I'm not going to negotiate from here on what the specifics are with members of Congress.
2 questions on voting rights. What is the response to Senator McConnell, who was critical of the focus on voting rights on January 6th? This day was being used to push Democrats' agenda of voting rights. And then, secondly, does the president plan to address voting rights tomorrow, and will he address specifically the filibuster and changing the rules of the filibuster?
Sure. Well, I would say first on the speech tomorrow, I can't believe it's tomorrow, but the speech tomorrow, he will touch on voting rights, but he will have more to say on that.
I will go
soon,
live for that speech.
In a longer format, and the speech tomorrow is more focused
I'm sure it'll
on
be
the day, what it means
very
in our
low key.
history, and the role that some have played. In
Not
continuing to
insane
perpetuate,
whatsoever.
the big lie and perceptions in the country, but he will touch on it. I would note, as it relates to specifically the filibuster, in March, just to go back a little bit here, because I expect we'll be talking about this more, the president said he had, quote, an open mind about dealing with certain things that are just elemental to the functioning of our democracy, like the right to vote, like the basic right to vote. We've amended the filibuster in the past. He's also said previously that senseless obstruction would be a big factor for him. And
I can't
think
say
there's
when
no
they open
question
up a book and they
objectively,
start reading out of it.
Republicans have not once but 4 times obstructed basic legislation that should not be partisan.
Just talking
It
points.
is about upholding
She's not
our
being genuine.
Constitution as they simultaneously attack the most fundamental American right, the right to vote. He also said back in December that if necessary, he supports a rule change to uphold the sacred right of Americans to vote. And this is reflective of the fact that while he is a creature of the Senate and somebody who respects the history of the Senate, he wants the Senate to function. And he wants to move towards.
You mean he
and is
wants
open
what he
to
wants?
Rules changes that will help the
If
Senate.
I don't get what I want, it's not
function.
functioning.
So I expect he'll have more to say about that, but I just wanted to note a couple of the things he said, including right before Christmas.
Sorry, you said a longer format down the line. Is there another speech planned on voting rights?
We'll have more to say soon, but he'll have more to say tomorrow, past tomorrow, in another format about voting rights. Go ahead, Emily.
I wanted to kind of piggyback on what my colleague was just saying, because I was wondering, does he plan to visit the Senate at all and do a full thorough speech on reform, just as he did when he went to the House regarding the infrastructure bill? Can we see that? And back on the speech again, I know you can't give out everything, however, in calling out Trump, is he also going to speak directly to his own party that has stood in the way of the bill? What is the administration doing on that end?
Well, I would say it is an important tool, but it is not the only way that we are providing access to free testing across the country, and certainly ensuring that we are reaching communities that may have challenges because of lack of broadband access or the inability to order online as part of our objective. I started this briefing announcing a number of the federal testing sites that we've opened and ones that we will continue to expand. This is in addition to the 20,000 tests we have available across the country.
These questions are so
50 million
boring.
Tests
This is what
are in
happens.
the process of going out, started in December.
These press conferences are an exact result of what happens when you just stick to a narrative as opposed to seeking out truth. They don't even know what questions to ask because they're like, am I in the realm of what we're supposed to be talking about?
President as we work to address COVID. Go ahead, Daniel.
I have 2 questions. French President Emmanuel Macron said this week that he plans to hassle the unvaccinated to try to get them to get the shot.
A little bit more than
Since
that.
there are millions of Americans who have not been persuaded by, the various government campaigns to get vaccinated. Why hasn't the president focused more on kind of scolding the unvaccinated to try to tell them, hey, this is not working for society, and we keep getting these shots?
What an insane
I would say
question.
that, if you look just to a little over a year ago, last December, only about a third of the American people were willing to get a shot. And today, over 85% of American adults have at least
All
one
right,
shot.
that's great. So stop talking about it, man.
78% are fully vaccinated.
85% is a staggering
our
number.
objective has been to continue to convey to the American people the fact that getting vaccinated will help protect them from hospitalization, from death. It will help protect their loved ones. It will help protect their neighbors and their community. And we've had a great deal of success in that. And obviously the French will make their own decisions about the most effective way to communicate with their public.
Is there going to be any change in strategy in terms of messaging? You guys have had like the Jonas Brothers and others, but like, what do we, Joe Rogan?
More Jonas Brothers.
Joe Rogan.
I would say, Daniel, that our approach to date has been that we have looked
Tell
for
me you don't
trusted
listen to Joe
messengers,
Rogan
and
without
some of
telling me you
them,
don't listen to Joe
They
Rogan.
have been people who supported President Biden, and many of them were not. And it's been important to us to reach communities, meet people where they are, including with voices. Some of them have been local officials. We found, and this is no surprise to most people who've been covering politics, but local officials, local leaders, pediatricians, they are often the most trusted voices in communities, but also to work with voices of people who, again, may not have voted for the president, but can be effective in helping encourage people to get vaccinated.
Yesterday, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said that Democrats' version of the big lie is their concerns that Republicans are making it harder for people to vote. Does the White House have a response to what McConnell said?
Well, I would just say facts are facts, and when you make it harder to vote,
Facts
you make it
are
harder to vote.
facts.
So let's just give a couple of examples. Michigan Republicans have been replacing
here
members
comes
of
a little
county boards of
narrative.
canvassers
Someone's like,
who voted to
he
certify the 2020 election
was told to
results,
ask this question.
and are replacing them in some cases with
Weird.
individuals who ascribe to the big lie. Georgia passed a law that allows the state legislature to control the state election board, and in turn allows the state elections board to remove local election officials who manage the voting and counting process. Texas passed a law that makes it easier for partisan poll watchers to hover around people while they vote and intimidate
Oh,
them.
my God.
Montana passed a law that repeals same-day
Who you
voter
voting
registration,
for,
makes
boy?
it harder for people to vote by mail. And Republicans in Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin have been pursuing purported audits of the 2020 election, something that's been thrown out of 80 courts in service of the big lie. So if that is not making it more difficult to vote, I don't know what is, but maybe Mr. McConnell has a different definition of that. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Ahead of the January 6th anniversary
Okay.
tomorrow, does the president think Attorney General
Clutching
Merrick
for
Garland
straws
is
there,
enough
Jen.
to investigate the attempt to overturn the 2020 election? And also, some Republicans are accusing Democrats of playing politics with the anniversary. Does the president think
Yeah, why would they do that?
bipartisanship and relations between the two parties are better or worse off than they were a year ago?
Worse.
Well, on the first one, we do something different here. We leave any decisions about investigations to the independent Justice Department, something that the Attorney General naturally demanded, and the President wanted to in his Justice Department and his Attorney General. And in the second, I would say that what you'll hear the President talk about tomorrow is the fact that you don't just love your country when you win. You love your country, you love democracy.
I love that.
In any scenario. And what is most disappointing to him is that there has been a silence and at times a complacency by far too many Republicans who have sat by and defended the big lie and perpetuated misinformation to the American public. That is not meant to be a partisan. That is meant to be a statement of fact and an important reminder to people of the history of our democracy in this country, and I think that's what people will hear from him tomorrow. I just have to get quickly around here because I want to get to everybody. Go ahead.
I have a question on testing. You started by talking about testing capacity and increasing testing capacity. I'd like to know if the administration, federal government, is doing anything to increase testing processing. We've seen the lines of people waiting, but they're also waiting a long time to get those results, and that keeps society from moving forward. So what is the administration doing to help with that processing gap?
I know that question was just asked on the COVID briefing. It's a very good question. I believe they said they'd look into more information, so let me see if they have more on that.
Okay, one more question for you. Similar vein, with the Omicron variant having such a big impact, perhaps an outsized impact than we were expecting, is the administration eyeing any additional COVID relief? I know
Jen asked about restaurant relief, but just sort of a larger package to help people sort of get through this new phase of COVID.
Yeah, how do we print
The
more
same
money?
answer applies. We are constantly in conversation with Congress and leadership and members about what we think and what they think the American people need in any moment. But it's important also to remember we are in a very different place than we were a year ago or 6 months ago. Historic records of job creation, historic economic growth across the country, historic low numbers of unemployment, low levels of unemployment, I should say, and 200 million people who are vaccinated. So we're in constant conversation, but in terms of a prediction of a specific request, I would say they're constant conversations, but nothing new to report at this point in time.
Thanks, Jen.
Go ahead. Sorry, I will quickly get around to the last three. Go ahead.
Okay, real quick, asking one question on behalf of a colleague who couldn't be here, from Catherine Lucy of the Wall Street Journal. Does the White House see the teachers union in Chicago as an obstruction to overseeing schools? What is their message to union leaders?
So I believe I answered this a little
Yes,
bit earlier.
she did.
And the
You
president
should
wants
listen.
schools to be
You're
open.
in the room with
He
her.
believes we have the tools for schools
I'm not
to be
even
open,
working, and I
we're
heard
gonna
that
continue
question.
to work to ensure that students are in classrooms, they are in classrooms safely, and they are focused on the future.
And yesterday, New York City Mayor Eric Adams urged local businesses to return back to their offices. We know that the president has said, it's safe to return to schools, but does he agree with this message that, workers should be going back to their offices to help out the quote, financial ecosystem?
Local leaders are going to make decisions about what is safe and best in their communities. I would say that we would really defer to them. Go ahead in the back.
About the upcoming Russia talks, what are you guys expecting?
Russia
Are you expecting any
talks.
concrete results after
Concrete
these 3 rounds of
results.
talks, or are you just happy with keeping the line of
I'm just happy
communication
with
open?
keeping the line of communication.
I think, and hopefully, I gave a pretty extensive preview of what we expect.
I'm
or
5
what
years
we are
old.
going to into the discussions, the 3 sets of talks to accomplish.
When you're
but I'm
talking
not
of
gonna make a prediction
Russia,
what's gonna come
what's
out
the
of
deal with Russia?
Just a quick follow-up. There's
Whoa,
a lot
where'd
of
she go?
focus on if Russia does indeed invade Ukraine, we will have very harsh consequences for the Russian government. What about the status quo? What is the White House's position on if things don't change and they don't invade Ukraine?
Well, we are continuing to provide defensive assistance to Ukraine. We've been providing assistance, and we will continue to do so in the weeks and months ahead. And that is building on, of course, when President Zelensky was here. And we will continue to discuss, work in close coordination with our partners and allies in Europe as we work to reduce and de-escalate the situation on the border. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. I have one follow on testing and then one separate
How many
question.
questions do they
Follow is,
get?
You say the CDC is driven by data, but I'm wondering what role the data about just the sheer availability of tests at this exact moment in time is playing in the guidance that they're offering. And once those 500 million tests, and all
these
of the
questions are
various tests
boring.
that the White House is procuring, once those come to market, could we see the guidance change?
Well, Dr. Walensky answered this question on the COVID briefing and said specifically it had nothing to do with access to tests. And actually, there's a wide, expansive, we're continuing to expand the number of tests that are available, but it's not an issue with tests, their guidance.
A child who has simply been exposed to COVID in school is going to participate in a test to stay in school program, but someone who has actually had COVID is not required to test to re-enter society.
Well, again, I would point you to the CDC to answer any specific questions on their guidance. It's driven by their own data and their own scientists.
And then on Build Back Better, CNBC and Change Research conducted a poll in late December asking various demographics about some of the legislation that's been proposed, the state of the economy. Pure independents, the group of voters that secured the election for President Biden, they give the president a D across the board on economic issues, and only 30% say that Build Back Better will grow the economy and create jobs. What is your own internal polling telling you about whether independents want Build Back Better and whether you should recalibrate for a different set of policy proposals?
Well, without getting into internal polling, I will tell you that Build Back Better, as you know, hasn't passed yet. And we are working to get it passed. And what we see in a lot of polling is that people like the components of the bill, but they don't know exactly what's in Build Back Better.
And neither
what
do the
needs.
politicians.
And it's always easier to sell a package to the public once it's passed. So we are hoping we are going to get to that point. That is our objective. I would note
It's
that
easier to sell to the
economic
Americans
data
once
is very
it's passed.
strong right now in a lot of areas, economic economic growth,
Wow.
job creation, low unemployment.
That is our
We
political
also understand
class
the way
for you
people are
right then
experiencing,
and there.
The American public is experiencing a life right now is through the prism of a pandemic that is we're almost 2 years into.
Once it's already in your
They're
throat,
tired
we'll
of
tell
it.
you what's
They're
in it.
fatigued by it. While it has been an unpredictable, historic pandemic,
Insanity,
they want
dude.
it to be over. And their experience with the economy is inherently tied to that. We understand that it's less about data and more about what people are experiencing in their day-to-day life. It doesn't look normal. They're worried about there being labor shortages and there being canceled flights or not enough teachers in school because of the spread of Omicron. We understand
Or
that.
'cause they're
So our
forced
focus right
to
now
undergo
is
something.
on doing everything we can to continue to fight the virus. We think that is the biggest driver in making people feel better about their daily experiences and better about, we know, the progress that's been made in the economy. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you
No
tomorrow.
Peter? Oh, Fox News, you're killing me, Smalls. Thanks, guys, so much for tuning in to the Derek O'Shea Show. I appreciate you guys. Check out my podcast that I did today on the Mayo Nursing and Power and what to do with power and how to change your life and how to look after your own self. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the day. Thank you for joining the White House. But have a great rest of your day. I'll probably go live later if there's a good story to do. But if not, just share this with all your friends and family. Again, if you're watching my video format, I think I put my podcast up on Facebook. I put it up on Twitter. Put it up on BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. It's not up on YouTube because anything COVID related, I'm just not going to talk about because their rules constantly change. And even when I feel like I'm not being crazy and I'm just being a normal human being and have a normal discussion, it's not okay to do on that platform. So I just won't talk about it. I don't care, and neither should you. And you should get off these platforms anyways. You should get on Rumble and just commit to it, or BitChute or Odyssey or whatever. The only problem with Rumble, as always, is that their live stream is not good. And it's not free either, so they make you pay for that crap. So have a great day. And I'll catch you on the next episode of the Derek O'Shea Show.